Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to the Planning and Highways meeting today, the 27th of July. I'm not going to read all through this, but I think everybody knows what to do in case of a fire. All I would ask is that you put your mobile phones on silent or turn them off, please. So we go on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
It's apology from Councillor Sally Markwell and Councillor Lindsay Sturton is substituting for.
Thank you. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matter on the agenda. No. Public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and the Seaford Town Council policy. In accordance with Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately before each planning application. Are you happy for us to just go straight through? Thank you. Agenda item 4, planning applications. Applications received in the week commencing the 26th of June. LW/23/0366, 35 Grosvenor Road, single storey front extension. Who'd like to lead on this application? Councillor Bowman?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's relatively small and I think it actually looks better than what there is now, so I'm quite happy to support it.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Richard Hanover. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, just obviously on the low agenda there, it's quite varied properties. It's one of the more older street scene in Seaford in a lot of ways, just at the top of the 259 there. And yeah, I mean, it's relatively small boundary between, but I don't think this is quite supplements the situation, so I would support.
Thank you. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands?
Can I comment, please?
Yes.
So I've discussed these with Councillor Markwell, and I know I'm not supposed to act under dictation, but I can perhaps ask a question which is about the depth of the proposed development and whether the depth would be out of character with the other properties.
I think it's just doubling the size of the
Yeah,
depth of the porch.
Richard Hunter said there's quite a mixture in there. The thing is with these applications for extensions, any extension in front of the building line has to have permission. This is quite a small one as things go, and the guidelines, the design guidelines that were attached to our plan, they don't necessarily welcome front extensions, but this is so small it can't be really classed as a front extension. It's more sort of infill. But I could check the plans, the depth, but it's really quite modest. And the only reason it needs permission is that it's in front of the building line. So any little extension in front of the building line is caught by the fact that you can't have any permitted development, as you can in the rear of property, because the building line is sort of considered as sacrosanct. But just look at the plan. Yeah, ground floor and roof plans. I've got a ruler, a scale rule, but it's very, very small. compare the two. The existing. So I got the proposed and the existing on the.
Maybe that's a more complicated question than I thought I was
Well, no,
asking.
I mean, I like
I
to use
think
this.
it's only double in that front bit, isn't it?
Yeah. 1 to 100. It makes me feel like not like a
It's a slide
lawyer.
rule of sorts, isn't it?
It makes me feel not like a lawyer.
No, it's not a slide rule, is it? It's
No, it's
Well,
it's
Scale route.
a scale.
I
A
just got my
scale.
tape measure.
Have you used slide
slide rules are for
rules? Multiple.
turning
Multiply.
multiplicative and division into addition and subtraction.
That's 8. Let's have a look at that one. Proposed.
Yeah, before calculators were invented, sort of thing, wasn't it?
It's roughly doubling the size of what's there now, which is what you said all along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite modest.
Yeah.
So it was 8 metres to 16, I think, something like that, on the 100 scale. I think it was-
Is that, do you mean 8 square metres to 6?
Oh no, it's the this
The length going out to
this
the
measures
road. that's
this
what we
measures the
are.
length.
That's the issue, isn't it? I thought it goes towards
It's-
the road. isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lost 100. It's 100 scale. There we are. Well, yes, it's on the 100 scale. It's a 0.8 of a metre to 1.6 of a metre. Hopefully that's accurate. That's right, but that's the best I can do. So it's a relatively modest, yeah, and rounding it off at the front to give more space in the living room.
Okay.
It's
Right.
relatively small living room at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. It gives it another little extension to the outside.
Okay. So I've got a proposal on the table to support this application by Councillor Bournemouth, seconded by Councillor Richard Hanneman. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously.
Thank you. Week commencing the 3rd of July, LW/23/0376, 60 Clementine Avenue. And it's a garage conversion, change to cladding materials at the front elevation with alterations to the fenestration and installation of solar PV panels at the rear elevation. I'd like to lead on this one.
Just to say before you start that the solar panels are mentioned because they're all part of the scheme, but they don't require planning consent. Only the garage conversion requires planning consent because there's a condition on the development that the garages be retained as garages. So that requires permission because it's contrary to the original condition. And the change to the materials requires permission, but not the solar panels.
Thank you. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Bourne?
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of properties around that area are changing to cladding now. There's a few down the road, and I'm sure there'll be more along the way, so I'm quite happy to support that. With the garage, I wasn't too sure whether we should be, because they are usable garages, and although they have still got off-street parking there for it, but the area was, as Jeff said, proposed for the garages to be retained, so I'm still not 100% sure whether.
Looking at the plans, I think there's retaining the garage door.
Yeah, for a
where
storage
For
area.
the storage area, so to my mind, I think it would be easily convert back to a garage as it's an integral garage. So for that reason, I haven't got a problem with it, but any other comments? Sorry.
Well, just to say that while there's a condition requiring it to be retained as a garage, which is why consent's granted. There's no requirement to use it as a garage. Obviously, a lot of people use garages to store junk, and it's got 2 parking places on the driveway. So, you know, a lot of garages are not usable. Some of them because they're not wide enough for modern cars, and some because they're just used as storage anyway. So that I think needs to be considered as well.
Yeah. I think Councillor.
I'll go after Councillor.
Okay, Councillor Sturton.
Just a quick question, I wasn't clear what the proposed cladding material is.
It's wood.
Yes, timber.
Timber.
It's
There are other houses down that street.
timber cladding.
It's a timber weatherboarding.
Yeah.
Which is quite trendy now. The proposed elevations, I'll just show you. Yes.
It's survived.
It's wooden,
It's empty.
wooden planking on the front, wood weatherboarding on the front, as opposed to the current.
Yeah, it's quite a small area
Yeah,
actually.
it's quite a small property, quite a small area. Yeah.
It seems fine to me, would it be out of character?
No, there are other bungalows along that road which have got the Marley cladding along that road. So it's quite a mixture of different, so it wouldn't be out of character. Okay, Councillor Honeyman.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, sometimes, actually, the actual installation of the garage can make it, then if someone else wanted to reuse it with the garage, not workable again. So that's something, and obviously, I don't think they're using it at the moment, yeah, because I think both cars on the picture are too big for the actual current use anyway. They're relatively small garages, so that probably is used for storage. But obviously, sometimes I have seen garage conversions, and by the time they do all the installation, you end up, it makes it even smaller. So I don't know of the extent of their installation. I don't know if they got into that sort of detail. I don't remember seeing it, but it can sort of,
Yeah.
then in the future, someone if future owner, for example, wouldn't be able to and start using it as a garage if that's the case.
Okay. Councillor Honeyman.
I was just going to say, considering what the chap, I was quite interested to see that they'd done a pre-planning application. So I found that, still being new on knowing all the stuff, it was really good to see that they'd done that to make sure what they were going to do was going to comply with everything. And yeah, I found that really useful as a learning experience. It also says in the letter as well, the documents, that other properties have done similar things and allowed for the parking to be done as well. So yes, I thought this was okay.
Okay. Any other comments? So can I have a closer? Thank you, Councillor Kemp, and seconded by Councillor Lydia Honeyman. And can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
Planning applications received Monday the 10th of July, LW/23/0215, 37 Chimpton Way. So it's a replacement and enlargement of existing porch. Interesting plans on this one.
Yes, as I said to you earlier, I did ask the case officer for more information to be posted on the website, but that was on Tuesday and I haven't had a response. So the only information is what's on the website, I'm afraid, which is not really good enough.
No, I was just going to say, I don't feel I can make any decision because there's no information there. And even when I went on to Google Maps to see if I could find the property, but there's no picture of it either. So you can't even look at a picture of it.
The only one where you click on documents, along that line there is a map, and it shows the street, and it looks as though there is enough room for the extension of the porch. But there again, it's insufficient information. Councillor Buchanan.
So just a thought, if you click on the house next door, you can see this one kind of
Oh, okay.
button. It's the equivalent of about a brick and a half extension. So
Yes,
you probably wouldn't even know before and after,
No.
if you see what I mean.
Mm.
And presumably it's just to give the guy, because if it's that tiny at the moment, it's almost impossible to stand inside the porch. I think that's what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And the external appearance with the 4 windows and the door is retained.
Yeah, at the moment, the depth is 75 centimetres, and the new depth is, well, it's doubling the size, 150 centimetres. And the width is at the moment 300 and being increased to 425.
That
That's with the
means,
tape measure.
that means if these drawings are misleading then,
Yeah.
if these are the drawings on the, these are the drawings I got off the website.
So,
Councillor Bournemouth.
I was going to say, although you've got drawings and you can maybe kind of guess, it doesn't actually say what the materials are.
No.
You assume it's going to be brick and UPVC, but there's no information, so we can't actually make a decision on this at all.
suggest you could say, just a suggestion that it appears to be a relatively minor extension and it appears to be acceptable, but there isn't really sufficient information on there to make a proper decision, to give proper consideration. So, you know, sort of indicate that it doesn't appear to be a problem, but you know, you can't actually say 100% because of the lack of information. And well, I mean, you could criticise the council for actually validating the application, but that's up to you. But I think you might want to actually just say,
There's no application form
No.
either.
There's nothing to
Because on the application
No.
form it will give
Exactly.
what materials it
it
is.
gives you half an idea that it might be quite a minor event.
Would you have had to, would you have to pay for that?
I think, reading between the lines, it was probably the house owner regarded it as such a minor extension, but resented the fact that they had to apply for planning permission because it's in front of the building line, and decided he wasn't going to get professional plans drawn up because, you know, they would start at £500 or something like that. And so he's got quite an old reference, as if there's been some toing and froing between him and
But
the...
it is an amended application.
And it is amended. I don't know what the first one looked like, but this one's amended. And the planning officer might have just shrugged his shoulders and said, well, you know, we'll let this one through. Shouldn't have done, because they've got their requirements. We looked at their requirements at the last meeting, you know, and there's got about 5 or 6 boxes to tick, and this only ticks, well, it doesn't really tick any of them.
No.
But you know, all I can say is, as I say, it gives you a rough indication, but no more than that. And you can't. And I think you have to. If I were you, I would want to say something about that, because they shouldn't get through the net, these applications. It should give you enough information to make an informed decision. But it's up to you.
Councillor Buchanan.
Yes, so just a quick one. You mentioned some dimensions there a moment ago. Where did you get those dimensions from? Just out of
It
interest.
was on the application,
Ah.
on the map, on that.
Application form they do, then.
Yeah,
I didn't see that on the
yeah.
website.
And then it's got what do you call it? A scale, that's it, sorry. It's got a scale, and then you take your measurements from that scale to the eastern scale.
Well, yeah. You see, there's no guarantee. It might have been blown up on the screen.
If these are true to scale, this is the same as that one. And this, as I say, is only about a brick and a half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very narrow,
It's very narrow extension.
yeah, thank you. Councillor Richard Hanlon?
Yes, I mean, sometimes, yes, I didn't think there was enough there, so basically I wouldn't vote on this today anyway, but I mean, it's bound to get added to by the various parties anyway, before the others do make a final decision, you know, the officers there, So I'm undetermined this night, but I think it'd be easier outside of the group.
Do you want to sort of propose
None, because it's not, we don't
similar
have
to
to.
what
No,
Jeff has
yeah.
said?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to leave out the fact that, you know, that it appears to be quite minor and just say there's simply not enough information for us to consider it, then that's a reasonable response as well, because it just isn't enough information.
Do you want to propose
Yeah, I
that?
propose that, and then,
Does that have a second?
Yeah, but can we add the fact that Lewis shouldn't have actually
Well, so, yeah,
allowed it to go through without all the
Wonder
minimum
why.
documentation as well?
wonder why it was validated. Probably a Friday afternoon one.
Also, I mean, can we add the encouraging bit that it seems to be unproblematic?
Well,
Because
but, you know, you could say that.
it's encouraging to the pure chat, which is going to get some bad news.
well, yeah. I mean, if that's what it's decided.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Councillor?
Oh, no, sorry, it's just got hands up.
Okay. So, you're all
I'm happy with that, yeah. If you
Yeah.
want to say, yeah, on the surface it appears to
Give
be,
them a little
but,
bit of encouragement,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And a big but.
a big but, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll put it in capital
I
letters.
was going to say capital letters.
Or however.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. That's fine.
Okay,
That's
okay.
one of the words I was always told to take out of my writing.
Yeah, can we go,
Oh, okay.
can we go to the vote, please?
Right, me.
Can we vote on insufficient information,
Yeah.
basically? That's
That's
unanimous.
Basically, that's what we're doing. isn't it?
Unanimous. Yeah.
On to tree works. TW stroke 23 stroke 0057 stroke TPO 3 Seaford Close. I'd like to lead on this one. Councillor Buchanan?
The truth is, I couldn't work out where this was from the information on the website. And there's two diagrams. There's one there that kind of shows the house number 3, and there's another diagram on the application. And you can't equate the two easily. And if you look on Google Maps, this number, I couldn't find a number 3 either when I was there. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just didn't feel there was, I couldn't locate where the tree might be. In terms of what they're planning to do, it's 12 metres high, reduced by 3 metres, and then remove some lower branches. Can't specifically comment on that, but if it's already 12 metres high, sounds quite tall.
Councillor Olivia Hunman?
Yeah, I did go and drove past it yesterday. I didn't get out the car, but I just saw where number 3 was, and there was quite a lot of tall sycamores behind. I didn't suss out which one because there was just loads of trees there. So I didn't see any problem with the fact it was reducing it by 3 metres and removal of low branches.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do you want to make that as a proposal?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so can I have a show of hands as supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously.
TW stroke 23 stroke 0020 stroke TPO 8 Brodine Close, Sycamores again. Councillor Baldwin.
There seems to be a conversation going on between like the officers and the applicant, because there was different things, but no, you didn't have the officer's response. So I don't know what the officer said, because he's then come back with more information, but then it's getting for the lines, trees are starting growing out, and the flint walnut. But it does also state that he was going to talk to a tree surgeon about it as well, but then there's no information about what the tree surgeon might be suggesting. So I really struggled with this. I can understand if the wires are going to be damaged and things that it will need doing, but I do think he does need to get a tree surgeon out to look at the specifics of it before he does any work.
Councillor Hyland?
Yeah, again, I just did a drive past and just saw loads and loads of sycamores, masses of them there. Yes, I agree with like Councillor Bournemouth that they do need to get a tree surgeon out. I have to admit, I didn't read that part of the thing, must have missed that part. But, yes, if that's what was read.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think they must have had some sort of advice on it because, you know, what they're asking to do is, there's quite a list there, so there must have been discussing it with somebody. And there are sycamore's after all, they grow like anything, so I can't see a problem with that.
Again, it's got an old application, so it's obviously been a bit of discussion. It was only number 20, whereas we're up to about number 60. So it's a month or two old, its registration. So there's been a lot of to and froing. And as Councillor Clay said, you know, he does seem to know what he's doing. And a lot of these sycamores are multi-stem, you know, which makes them, well, they're not the best quality.
Right, so can I have a proposer to Councillor Bournemouth
To support.
to support? Okay. Seconded by Councillor Clay. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously, thank you. 2W/23/0060/TPO 3 Sycamore Close.
It's not
But this
sycamore.
one's a course combined. Excuse me.
I thought this is wrong.
Oh dear. Right, who wants to go first?
Come on,
All right.
let you this one.
I think as I was saying earlier on before we started the meeting, I did go and have a look at this tree, and I'm really concerned, as I said, because, I mean, they've obviously got tree surgeons to do it. Sorry, tree surgeons have filled in the application form, and they are known in this area. And it says it's got a very heavy lean. Well, I don't quite, it's still quite upright. So I'm really confused, because so when I Googled the definition of a heavy lean, it wasn't very clear exactly what a heavy lean was. But it says, as I said, a leaning tree can be caused by poor root structure, but it still seemed to be very, very upright. So I was, and it is sort of growing in between another tree as well, at the edge of it. So I'm really bothered about this, about taking down a tree that doesn't seem to be heavily leaning, unless in the wind it really does do this. But there is another one in there. There seemed, when I drove into the close, there is another one in the sort of, I'm not sure whose property it is, but near the sort of house, there is another one there that's just as upright. So I'm really confused about why they're saying it's a heavy lean. What information are we missing if that's what they're saying? Because in their brief that they did, it said it's not diseased, it's not causing subsidence, it's not causing damage to the drains, it's not in a conservation area. So I'm really confused as to this information.
Yeah. And I must admit, when I've been along the A259 in that area, I haven't seen a tree with a heavy lean. Councillor Clare.
Heavy lean is sort of,
That's all right.
heavy lean implies that it's in danger of falling down
Yeah.
imminently. So, yes, it is a 10-degree lean, 15-degree lean, 20-degree lean. I should think anything above more than 20 degrees is a severe lean, but less than that is not really a lean.
Councillor Bournemouth.
I was basically going to say what Councillor Honeyman said.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
Yes, thank you. Again, I don't know if it's just me and my digital skills, but there was one a supporting document that talks about the document type, which is a tree survey, and this document is covered in sketch plan drawing. I couldn't find it either of those on the website.
No, that's a common problem with the applications, that they don't have all the information that we need sometimes to make a a proper decision.
Well, according to-
We've reminded Lewis many times of the need
Yeah.
for more information. Photographs specifically as well, because it's so easy to take photographs and upload them nowadays.
Yeah.
According to this Planning Services Lewis District Council document, the description of the works must, in capital letters, be provided when applying for work for the trees.
No,
Mm.
as I say,
An
it's-
identification of the trees and description of the works must be provided. So it's difficult to make that kind of determination about this without.
yeah. So, right, I've got the feeling it's going to be,
I think personally I'm confused as to how they're determining heavy lean and what.
Yeah, there's two elements. There's what Councillor Lydia has said about, how it appears on site. I was intending to have a look at it myself, but I forgot on the way in. And what Councillor Buchanan says about the lack of information. I think both those two elements need to go back, and we just leave it to the council's tree officer to make a decision. We can't support it, but or we could object to it on the basis that it appears from the members' site inspection that it's not leaning. But we leave it to the tree officer to decide. We can't support it anyway.
Yeah, because also the set of people who filled in the application form have put that in, and I don't know. I'd like to understand how they put that in.
Yeah.
Not, I know I have a little bit of background in trees, but I don't understand it from a tree surgeon's point of view.
No.
I mean, I feel that we could object to it because of its status as a TPO, but also add that, with insufficient information again, like you were saying.
Well, yes, I mean, you could object to it on the basis that, site inspection makes, only shows that there is no actual heavy lean as indicated on the form.
Because it shows that we've bothered to
You've actually
to
been to
look.
visit the tree, and it's not like this.
And it's up to
Does heavy lean have a meaning within
Well, that's why I was trying
practice?
to look it up, to what
I've
it
never come
was.
across it. I've never come across it myself. No, but it might be a very small lean as far as But I think we leave that to the tree officer. But I don't think you can risk supporting it. At least I think you need to set to let them know your reservations, both about the tree itself and the lack of information.
Does anybody want to propose or objecting and about the lack of information as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And seconded. Thank you. And those all in favour, please.
That's a unanimous objection, and
Thank you.
with the other element about the lack of information.
Yeah. Thank you. Now leading on to agenda item 5. It's just to note. Would you like?
So do we check? Yeah. Yes.
Do you want to
Yeah,
lead on this one?
As you know, most applications we're notified, or if we're notified of an application by Lewis District Council, it usually comes onto the agenda. But in this case, this, as most members will know, all members will probably know, it's a project which the Ouse Valley group, of which and the council is supporting the project and taking part in the project, and it's been before full council, and full council, if you like, has done this committee's job for it beforehand in supporting the project which it's taking part in. And a letter of support is in the supporting documentation with Lewis for consideration before they make a decision. So it obviously wasn't appropriate for this committee to consider it. It's already been considered. Full council grants the planning committee's powers to, or delegates the powers of the council to consider planning applications. It can take them away at any time because obviously it's the sort of superior power. And also, going the other way, if the planning committee decide that a matter is too weighty, too complex for them to deal with, it can decline to use its powers and refer it to full council for a decision. So it goes both ways. So in this case, full council have made the decision to support this project, support this application. So it's just for the planning committee to note that this application is currently going through the determination process.
Councillor Olivia Hanlon?
Yeah, obviously we would have all got an email from a resident who has raised concerns, because obviously when we agreed to this, we didn't know about, as he said, a road safety audit has now been undertaken by S&B and it's been dated May to June 2023. And as he commented about this lack of consultation to the emergency services. Now presumably, as you said, we're only allowed to note here. This will all, now will this go to, so presumably this will go to Lewis District. Will this go to the actual committee there, or will it go, how, I just want to know from my point of view whether the process will be, will it go straight to that committee, or where will it, who will make the decision on this so that those points get included?
It usually depends on the number and the weight of objections as to what goes to committee.
Right, okay.
And
sometimes we've requested that it gets
yeah,
prepared
sometimes
to
we've
open
requested it.
Right, okay.
So it's like there are rules, but it's also discretionary on the part of the head of planning as to what's reported and what isn't. You know, over 90% of applications now are delegated, but this one is a slightly unusual one. But I'm not sure that the weight of objections would require it to go to committee. But if some ward members were to request it, then that might lead to it going to committee. But the rule about ward members requiring it to be referred is subject to there being sufficient planning reasons for it to be considered by a committee, and sometimes has to be done till earlier on in the process.
It's within 14 days of receiving, you receive each week the planner. So within 14 days of receiving that, you can ask for it to go to committee. Otherwise, you're too late.
But they still might use their discretion to refer it to committee, so we don't know.
Councillor
Yeah,
Clay?
just as a matter of interest, and me not being a new local, where's Cliff Gardens?
It's the
Where the
furthest.
splash point is.
East side of
It's the furthest of the most easterly of the roads across the
Yeah, I
Martello
thought it was there,
Fields.
but I couldn't be sure.
Okay,
Okay.
back of Cliff Close.
Yeah.
It
So it's a cul-de-sac basically.
goes past what's called Pump Field, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is the sort of very small easterly field of the
Yeah.
of the Martello Fields.
Okay.
Councillor Richard Hanlon?
Also, as a rep on the Seaford Community Partnership, is a link to the Use Value project anyway. It's all part of the big Green Avenue, ultimately, that's the aim, isn't it, really? This particular project, even though albeit a bit standalone, isn't it, in a way compared to the rest, but obviously it's fairly significant money, but it's being managed in partnership with us, isn't it, the SCP. And we have seen, there was presentations on their proposals, consultation anyway, was it February, March? Something around there, wasn't it? I can't remember. Now, it was roundabout, but before the election period got sort of kicked in. Obviously, the applicant there is being managed. He was an assistant director at the county council anyway, so he was in transport environment areas. So, but apparently, I found out the district council set it up wrong anyway when they set it on the system, and now all the there were some parties like the emergency services are now going to be included in the consultation now, so they weren't. I think it's meant to be automatic. They're meant to set it up, things are meant to automatically go off. And that's how their system works. With these more new planning databases and everything. Apparently, emergency services got missed out in quotes. That's what I was sort of told to say. Hopefully, you get response from ambulances and police and fire brigade and coast guards as well now, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Just to see if they ever use it. I've never seen anyone use it. In that sense, but there's always a first time, I suppose, so I can see they obviously want to do a response, wouldn't they?
Yes, they've caught up now with the audit that's been done.
So hopefully, I mean, there's obviously issues, always is with planning, even something relatively straightforward as what we're doing here, or they're doing now. I mean, I'm just on the other side, really. And there's always going to be issues, isn't there, with what goes on, and I'm sure being right on the coast with that issue when they go further down the line about all the sort of types of vegetation and everything and what goes actually on that particular bit of land, because it's all going to be weatherproofed up to a point, otherwise it just blow away, won't it really? Literally, it's trying for them. I can see we can see why they're doing it, but it's part of the obviously project from the SCP really, which they're trying to be going in. I think it's been on the horizon for several years now, isn't it, from them? But we watch the space of it, don't we, see how it progresses. I've got confidence with the person doing the application anyway, because of his position in his previous life when he was assistant director. So,
okay. Right, unless there's any other comments, we are asked to note the report.
Can we not add any comments in? I was just asking about, because obviously we've had this resident raise this issue. What can we actually do?
The resident can put an objection in.
oh, she can apply to this.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, local council.
I mean, it seems to me that
Local councillor, yeah.
it seems to me that the objections, which weren't outright objections, there were things that could potentially be addressed, but it seemed that they were quite well put.
She's not a local councillor, but she's not even in the right area. She lives elsewhere anyway in the town. So.
Yeah.
I think it is on this agenda just for noting, and I think the council has dealt with it at full council. I think, obviously, there may be concerns that it should go to, because of the objections, it should go to the committee rather than be delegated. But it's not for this committee.
No,
to find
that's
out.
not. I'm just asking general questions at the same
I mean, that
time.
anything can be done outside committee, like correspondence or whatever. But it's just for this committee to know, because the full council sort of tied our hand with that.
Yes, so we're going to. She can obviously apply to this application online like anyone else. can't
Yeah,
she? If she wants to
yeah.
put a case application in.
Councillor Cameron.
So just, I think reinforcing Councillor Turton's point, it's not actually objections, it's recommendations on things that can be improved in terms of safety and things like that. So then it's not actually objections.
There is a neutral box, you can support, object, or a neutral,
Neutral, yeah,
so they can just make
either one.
comments
Yeah.
on Lewis District website.
Okay.
Let them do that.
Right, so,
Is the councillor going to reply to this email that was widely sent to many of us?
Well, Adam's dealing with this himself. I'm sure he'll want to respond,
Right.
or somebody from the group anyway. They're all away at the moment, but I'm sure somebody will want to take it up.
That's one of the officers.
Well, I'm not sure how it works. Adam's involved personally in this. He's away at the moment. And all the other people, the movers of the application seem to be away. John Morris is in Italy. Keith Blackburn isn't around today. Somebody else wasn't around because there was a bit of a email correspondence today about it. But so as far as this committee is concerned, his hands are tied. He just has to note it. But as to what happens outside it, yes, the council are involved as one of the group, and Adam's, as I say, dealt with this personally. So, and he's away for 2 weeks. So, I'll let him know what's going on. But I don't think he's dealing with his emails. So, I haven't really been involved at all in this. So I don't know. But I mean, Richard, you probably know more about it than I do.
Well, no. I mean, I'm not aware of the applicants. This supported. Well, this is. But obviously, the SCPs. It's more the SCP thing. Behind that, the activists on the SCP have been doing the work. If you've got objection, they go essentially they go for the SCP, not so much for us, do they, in that sense. And obviously, I think we got to the stage where we supported it sort of 18 months ago now. Anyway, been delegated effectively in partnership to the SCP to do the work, which is what sort of happened. And that's a partnership, especially with the finance side as well. But as you say, it's just, I don't know what the applicant, is there an object to it, or is there support to it? I don't know what it's about really.
Well, there's an email that came round from a resident with bringing up about road safety, but anyways.
Well, it's going through, all I know is if they're involved now in the future, the road safety side of things are, and is it more to do with the emergency services or just road surface generally?
Emergency services.
Yeah, they're involved, they've been consulted a part of it. Apparently Lewis set it up wrong, allegedly. So,
Necessarily back to your room originally, the agenda.
So it's just that, can I have a show of hands that we're noting the report?
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, it's noted. And then agenda item 6, the update report. There again, you're asked to note it unless there's any questions. There is one, isn't there?
There's just a couple of comments about the two cases at the end which have been approved where we objected.
Yes.
Quite recent meetings. 51 Marine Drive, unfortunately, it was dealt with in a bit of a rush, and our objection wasn't taken into account. I looked at the officer's report. It was an objection made at the last committee meeting on the 6th of July. I sent the response with details of the objection on Friday the 7th of July, which was the last day of the 3-week consultation period. And the officer's report, the delegated report granting consent, was dated the Tuesday the 11th of July, but it didn't pick up our objection, even though it was sent within the consultation period. I mean, sometimes, as we're on a 3-week cycle, our response goes in, you know, on the last couple of days of the period. But if we're going to miss the consultation period, I always email the officer to ask for an extension. In this case, it was the last day, the 7th, but it wasn't included in his report on the 11th. It indicated it was dealt with in a bit of a rush, sort of over that weekend perhaps. Because it's the same officer who spent last week with me at the public inquiry.
One of the person sitting next to you was
Yeah. So, it was, you know, reading between the lines, he was probably in a bit of a rush to clear some applications because he knew he had to spend the whole of the next week, like as I did, at the King's Church, Lewis, for the public inquiry into the Constitutional Club development. But obviously that's no excuse, and I was intending to sort of point out that, you know, our objection should have been taken into account. Presumably you would support that as well.
Yeah, can we, if you haven't read it, Chair, can Jeff actually write it formally to say there's no point us being here if they're just going to miss them out. If he's already pre-written the report for just to release it on the day, then there's no point us being here to do the comments. So
it's very quick to do the report a few days after the end of the consultation period. Usually it's done 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the consultation period.
I mean, as it's a substantial extension, I think it needs commenting this
So
time.
I'll write to LDC on that one then.
Thank
if
you.
that's, and 22 Bishopstone Road, our objection was taken into account. Well, it was included in the report, but they considered that there was sufficient room around the property. There's quite long gardens, quite a way back from the road, and with the different shapes and sizes and character of other properties in the road. I think they mentioned 48 was similar, 48 Bishopstone Road. They decided that there wasn't sufficient problems with it to justify
We did wonder.
a refusal.
Yeah.
We did wonder that one, but
So
we
yeah,
tried.
at least our concerns, objections were taken into account in that case. But as I say, unfortunately not for 51 Marine Drive. So that's.
it's an interesting road in a way, because the way the slope, no, on the gradient, the whole lot on the gradient effectively, isn't it? Until you get to the houses, and then obviously, actually the back's still going up, isn't it? Unless they dug it out. It's,
Yeah, they slope quite up, yeah. And towards the road. Yeah.
And the only thing I've got to add is that Councillor Sturton's looking at, I'm circulating the brochure that was produced at the inquiry last week, which shows quite vividly the effects or the impact of the new development on the current site there. As I say, I spent 4 days there along with Lewis District Council's officer and barrister and their 3 witnesses. The other McCarthy and Son have 5 witnesses. That's heritage, architecture, design, main planning witness and I can't remember the fifth one. Architecture, design, main planning. Oh, and highways. Sorry, highway. So there are 5 witnesses. We had 3 plus me. Or Lewis had 3 plus me. And just to give a sort of very brief resume. I think members will be aware of the Churchill development for 33 flats that was agreed on appeal. That's using up the 4 houses, the site of the 4 houses immediately before the Downs Leisure Centre. There was a proposal last year which went to appeal by Churchill, who are sort of McCarthy and Stone's main rivals for retirement living. And there were 2 appeals, one for a scheme of 33 flats and one for a scheme of 34 flats. The difference between the 2 buildings in that case was that they revised the plan of the building with 1 less flat to make it more like 3 separate houses rather than 1 big
Turn it
block.
around slightly.
Yeah, but as I say, the amendments to that were relatively minor because there was only 1 less flat in the other scheme. And the scheme for the 34 flats was actually refused on appeal. The appeal was dismissed because the inspector in that case, in spite of the fact that it was on the A259, considered that the larger block, or the more sort of solid block, had an unacceptable impact on the character of the road. Well, I mean, opinions differ on the character of Sutton Road there. I mean, it has got a certain character, but it's certainly not in line with a conservation area or anything like that. Whereas in the Constitutional Club, it actually borders the town centre conservation area.
Yeah.
It's a much higher quality, it's a more sort of delicate area for fitting buildings in, although there are a number of new buildings there already, lots of flats. But it's far more sensitive because it's of where it is on the edge of the town centre conservation area, adjacent to a listed building, which is Stone's house. So it was, one of the arguments was if the inspector on the Churchill development actually dismissed that appeal on the basis of affecting one of the appeals on the basis it affected the character of the street scene, with all the supportive information that these companies come up with about the critical need in the future for this sort of accommodation for the elderly, etc., etc. Because they quote government policies saying that, you know, what a dire need there will be of this type of accommodation projecting over the next 20 years. Well, so in spite of the fact there was all that evidence brought up by Churchill last year about the dire need, that appeal was still dismissed. Now that was used in the Constitutional Club case, was saying, well, this has a heritage impact, which the Churchill development didn't come into the Churchill development. So, you know, that's one of the reasons that was put forward by Lewis and me for dismissing this appeal, because it's a far more sensitive site than the one on the main road. Which I'm not saying the one on the main road was an acceptable site; it certainly wasn't. And also the reason given for the fact that the development on Sutton Road that Churchill got permission for cannot go ahead is because investigations into the site, once they'd got permission, showed that there were problems with the ground conditions on site, which would have required them to use piles, which was too expensive in the long run for them to contemplate, or couldn't use in piling. So, you know, I don't know if the land's some sort of, whether it's unstable, whether it's landfill or something like that, but that wasn't said, it was just the ground conditions aren't, the ground conditions are too unstable for them to contemplate the development, and it's been completely dropped. Anyway, that's I think you might have some questions about the Constitutional Club, but it's not on the agenda, but that's all I've got to say about it.
Councillor Hanlon?
I did attend just for a couple of hours or so on the Tuesday, the second day, didn't I? Just
Wednesday, yeah.
Wednesday, a couple of hours. So quite informative just to see the setup and obviously the Langley planning officer expected sitting on his own I found that quite interesting. I expect to have a full team of him, but it doesn't work like that, obviously not. But obviously, yeah, I mean, you've got obviously developers one side and then obviously the local authorities the other side. It's quite interesting. But I think, relatively speaking, I thought it's fairly laid back in that sense. It's quite informal, he's obviously, I'm obviously the planning inspector, that's his main role, obviously, and he knows what he's doing, obviously. And I was quite impressed, yeah, I mean, I heard bits about traffic flows at night and street flows, no pavement along what's the road?
Crouch Lane.
Crouch Lane even. No, there's a narrow lane and it's still two way, isn't it? And even though we had suggested at one stage on another development that it possibly goes one way out that way, or whichever way you decide to do it.
At the junction at the bottom is very...
And of course the square bit next to the Con Club is, even it's not a roundabout as such, is it? You can go either way around it. Now that's always an interesting one. But I'm sure all that was discussed when you did the site visits and everything else.
It was, yeah.
It's quite interesting to hear what we had to say, and we talked about Stone House when I was there as well, didn't we?
Yes, sir.
Finishing it off, and of course our side on the local authority lady, I've forgotten her name, but she didn't want to talk about heritage. It's almost like the building. She didn't like the word heritage. She said because that sounded too posh, and not too she brought it down to another terminology, didn't she? Heritage sounds a little bit too not approachable to the word, isn't it, really? But it's interesting seeing it anyway, albeit for a couple of hours or so on the Wednesday morning, and I'm pleased I found the time to do that. So I don't know if it's worth noting Jeff was there on the notes, or I mean, it's not really appropriate. But it's,
no, I don't think it's that. It's a strange procedure. It's a mixture of formal and informal.
Yeah.
But the objectors were able to give their objections, okay. I sort of compared it to a court run by a vicar. He has to adopt a formal procedure according to the rules, but he tries to make it as flexible and as friendly, user-friendly as possible. And it did mean that the objectors all had their say, although some of them are a bit fearful when they turn up. He does manage to sort of put their minds at rest. They have their say, and so everyone's happy as far as that goes. But he has to adopt a certain level of formality that's required by the rules. But everyone was happy in the end of the same thing.
Well, thank you for the feedback.
Can I just say,
questions?
I live at 55 Crookedville Road. I go up Crooked Lane and Crouch Lane almost every day, right? The real problem with both of those properties is shopping. It's getting food in.
Can I
was mentioned.
Can I bring the meeting to the end before you make a comment,
No, I
please?
realise that, but I mean, in discussing who actually walks around there, I do it on almost daily basis, because we don't have a car.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, can I have the show of hands of noting the report, please? Thank you. And that concludes the meeting at
8 o'clock.
yes, 8 o'clock dead on.